Besides the scene in the series where the children of the forest put the obsidian in the heart of the first man and turn his eyes blue, and the fact that in the show all the children of the forest are female, there's not much to tie the children of the forest to the deep ones or the women who have saved these men in the past from a watery death. However, I have been able to dig up some. And one thing is, there's this legend that they used water magic to break off Westeros from Essos during the wars with men, and that they tried to also do this in the neck, but were unsuccessful. They also formed the swamp around Moat Cailin by using this water magic to flood the earth. This is reminiscent of what Prince Garin did against the Valyrians on the Rhoyne. And while I think all of these floods were actually natural disasters, I think it's important that the people of Westeros have some memory of the children of the forest being associated with the water or water magic in some way. The most telling reference I can find is the Crannogmen. Now, we have every indication that the Crannogmen are highly interbred with the children of the forest. We have no indication whatsoever of them being along the coast and being associated with any kind of deep ones or mermen or squishers. But the Crannogmen supposedly can breathe water or breathe mud, and they have webbed fingers and toes, and their central stronghold floats around inside the swamp. They're associated with frogs and amphibious creatures, even called the frogmen by some. But I looked up the medical definition for synactyly, which is webbed fingers, and here's what it has to say. The medical term for webbing of the fingers or toes is called syndactyly. Webbed fingers and toes occur when tissue connects two or more digits together. In rare cases, the fingers or toes are connected by bone. According to the Boston Children's Hospital, 1 in every 2,500 babies is born with webbed fingers or toes, making this a fairly common condition. VCH 2012. Webbing of the fingers or toes is most common in Caucasian males. There are several different types of webbing that can occur between the fingers and toes. They are incomplete. The webbing appears only partially between the digits. Complete. The skin is connected all the way up to the digits. Simple. The digits are connected by only soft tissue, i.e. skin. Complex. The digits are joined together with soft and hard tissue, such as bone or cartilage. Or complicated. The digits are joined together with soft and hard tissue in an irregular shape or configuration, i.e. missing bones. In most cases, webbing of the fingers and toes occurs at random, for no known reason. Less commonly, webbing of the fingers and toes is a result of an inherited trait. Webbing can also be related to genetic defects such as Down syndrome and Apert syndrome. Both syndromes are genetic disorders that can cause abnormal growth of the bones in the hands and feet. Now, the fact that this disorder is in some cases hereditary may actually point to the fact that it was beneficial in some way to a certain population of humans in the deep past, and that they were at least fruitful enough to continue their bloodline into the present. What does this have to do with A Song of Ice and Fire? Well, the children of the forest have only 4 fingers, including the thumb. Something that Leaf says to Bran might also be a clue. The caves were timeless, vast, silent. They were home to more than 80 living singers and the bones of thousands dead, and extended far below the hollow hill. Men should not go wandering in this place, Leaf warned them. The river you hear is swift and black, and flows down and down to a sunless sea, and there are passages that go even deeper, bottomless pits and sudden shafts, forgotten ways that lead to the very center of the earth. Even my people have not explored them all, and we have lived here for 1,000,000 of your man years. She goes on to say, the bones of men, the bones of horses. She goes on to say, when explaining where all the children have gone down into the earth, into the stones, into the trees. Before the first men came, all this land that you call Westeros was home to us. Yet even in those days we were few. The gods gave us long lives, but not great numbers, lest we overrun the world as deer will overrun a wood where there are no wolves to hunt them. That was in the dawn of days, when our sun was rising. Now it sinks, and this is our long dwindling. In the world that men have made, there is no room for them or us. Now what strikes me about this is Leaf talks about a sea that goes down underneath the earth, and how some of the passages may have go all the way to the center of the earth. And she says that even her own people haven't explored them all when she's talking about these tunnels going down in an underground river to an underground sea. How can they have explored any of them, much less all of them, unless they're amphibious? Now, I got this quote. This was pointed to my attention when I was reading The Maiden Vault at WordPress. And she's got a lot of very cool insights into Game of Thrones. And her idea is that this endless sea under the earth goes under the Shivering Sea and connects to Essos in the forest of the Ifaquevron, or Ifaquevron. These are beings in the north of Essos that are described very much like children of the forest. They live in the forest. And in the world of ice and fire, it says, the god kings of Ib, before their fall, did succeed in conquering and colonizing a huge swath of northern Essos immediately south of Ib itself, a densely wooded region that had formerly been the home of a small, shy forest folk. Some say the Ibonese extinguished this gentle race, whilst others believe they went into hiding in the deeper woods or fled to other lands. The Dothraki still call the great forest along the northern coast the kingdom of the Ifaquevron, the name by which they knew the vanished forest dwellers. Corlys Valerion wrote of carved trees, haunted grottos, and strange silences. A later traveler reported that the Dothraki name for the lost people meant those who walk in the woods. None of the Ibonese met could say they had ever seen a woods walker, but claimed that the little people blessed a household that left offerings of leaf and stone and water overnight. The horse lords had hitherto shunned the forest of the northern coast. Some say this was because of their reverence for the woodwalkers, others because they feared their powers. It sounds a lot like the children of the forest, and this leaving out of offerings for these little people also equates them with the brownies, dwarves, and elves of European folklore. It may be that the children of the forest, or Ifaquevron, are partially amphibious, and they simply swam away from Essos to Westeros. It may be that the children of the forest also may have lived on both Essos and Westeros long before humans ever arrived. I don't know if they are the same thing as the Merlings or the Deep Ones. I think that they may be a sibling race that explored the terrestrial world before man did, or before man came to be. The interesting thing is, though they have the bones of men and giants on both Essos and Westeros, that is a testimony to the evolution, they don't have any bones of these elves, or Ephquevron, or children of the forest. And while the children of the forest do have a lot of traits that people like Stan Gooch have attributed to Neanderthals, like their love of song and their psychic abilities and their control over animals, their ability to communicate telepathically or have visions, they also have a lot of these traits that these mythical magical characters of European folklore have as well. While Martin does provide a backdrop of our fossil record on the more human side, he doesn't provide one for the mythic side of these little people, and that can be seen as similar to our own history. We've got evidence of these little people being around in myth, but very little fossil evidence of it. Is it because they all went back to the sea? When they become adults, they become Merlings? Or is it because the Merlings and the children of the forest are sister species, and the children of the forest are just a little bit more terrestrial than the Merlings? Or are the Merlings the males and the children of the forest are the females? Is one mad at the other because they chose humans over them, or because they chose the Ibonese type hairy men, Skagosians, over them, so forming the race of man, or because they chose the giants? I see a lot of parallels between the myths of Ireland and the myths of Westeros. The children of the forest are a lot like the Sidhe or the Shar, and indeed, when George R. R. Martin was having the others drawn for his graphic novel, he approved a drawing of these beautiful angelic-like White Walkers, and he actually told the person that he wanted it to look like a Sidhe made of ice. Now, the Sidhe of Irish folklore are a race of elf-like magical beings that lived in Ireland before the Tuath De Danann, or the first men, came to rule Ireland. At the time, they were at war with another race of beings who were the Sea People, also known as the Fomorians. They attacked from the west, and west is the direction from which these Deep Ones, or Merlings, seem to have attacked Orath and Westeros as well. Some say the Fomorians were giants, and their history is sometimes put together with the history of the Furbolgs, which were a later race that opposed the Tuath De Danann in Irish mythology. So in some accounts they're amphibians, some accounts they're giants, and they attacked from the sea. In Martin's Legends of Planetos, you have these maze makers who were destroyed by a force from the sea in Morath. And the Fomorians were known to have built these Cyclopean structures. It's all very reminiscent of this time in Irish history. So maybe the Maesters are right if the children of the forest are the same thing as the Deep Ones, or if they are an evolutionary outshoot of the Deep Ones or the Merlings. Maybe the maze makers are, like some legends say, the offspring of giants and men. Or maybe they existed before men came, as other legends say, and the maze makers are the offspring of giants and the children of the forest. But even if we compress the Merlings and the Deep Ones and the maze makers all into just two factions, the children of the forest and the giants, we're still left with yet another race that was in Westeros before the first men came that nobody seems to mention. These are the cannibalistic unicorn-riding Skagosi, who almost certainly I'd say positively, have a kinship with the Ibonese and with the hairy men who used to be, some say, the sole inhabitants of Essos, all of which are Neanderthals and are right where they should be if Planetos is the planet Earth, circa 12 to 25,000 years ago. And we'll talk about that next. Below I've posted 8 links to some of the articles by the community who have led me to some of these ideas about a song of ice and fire. The last 4 links provide further information to link Grayscale and the Stone Men with the Whites and the Others and the White Walkers. The very last one shows a further connection between the Merlings and the children of the forest through Patchface's visions and songs and chants and poems. Believe it or not, there's actually a Patchface code, and depending on whether he sings or rings his bells or rings certain bells, he's conveying messages from different people or different entities. Some of them seem to be entities from below the sea, and some of them seem to be the children of the forest. Now, why would an experience of being drowned and saved by a Merling give him the ability to communicate with both the undersea beings or the deep ones and the children of the forest, unless the children of the forest and the Merlings are connected? It's fascinating read. I hope you'll check it out. What this research has actually steered me in the direction of is the idea that there are this race of deep ones that are almost exactly like the deep ones of the Lovecraftian mythos. They existed and had a high civilization well before the time of man and reached a high level of technology that was far different from our own. The survivors of this civilization had to either go underground or go into the sea, and so evolved slightly separately. So you got the children of the forest and the Merlings. And this was due to some cataclysm that must have happened. And their civilization being destroyed led to the birth of mankind. But these deep ones, Merlings, children of the forest, have been influencing us ever since. Now, what are their evolutionary origins? They may be just a split off from the same lineage that led to mankind, or they may be something even deeper and darker. I always kind of had the feeling sometimes in Lovecraftian mythos that this may be some kind of a sentient being that evolved from dinosaurs or something even earlier in the primordial muck of the world, that evolved long before man ever came to be, and maybe evolved from fish or something like that. There's always the possibility that it's aliens. But the interesting thing about all this is that in the Lovecraftian mythos, the deep ones aren't so much associated with aliens. It's left kind of a mystery. Their ancient origins are always alluded to in a horrific way, like to know their origins would drive you insane. Whereas their opposers or counterbalance, the old ones or elder gods, it's definitely made clear that they came from outer space. Well, in George R. Martin's universe, you have the old ones too. They're named the Old Ones, and they have many analogous traits to the Lovecraftian Old Ones, and we'll talk about that in a later episode. And it may even be that the split between Merlings and the children of the forest has to do with the split between the deep ones and the old ones, because the old ones can go underwater too, and it's all very confusing and very interesting. But I also think that whether the old ones or the deep ones are aliens, or both, I also think that on one hand, it doesn't really matter whether the old ones or the deep ones are aliens visiting from outer space, to influence mankind in some way, because that's not really going to come out per se in the book. I think that George, like Lovecraft, will keep it kind of a mystery in the end. It may be that in his inner workings, he has the idea that these deep ones or old ones or both are from another planet and influencing us genetically in some way. And that seems to be what Preston Jacobs thinks, who has a lot of knowledge about George Martin's other works. But at the same time, for fantasy fans, a lot of them, it would kind of ruin it if it got turned into a science fiction story. So although it might be a science fiction story, I don't think you're going to get that reveal at the end. There'll be many allusions to it, but at the same time, there will be ways that you can still take the back door and interpret it another way if you want to. That's what I would do anyway. Well, we've got a lot more to talk about. The hairy men and the Ibonese and the Skagosi relationship with Neanderthals, what the ancient giant bones found all over Planetos mean, reconciling the map of Planetos with the map we have of our Ice Age world, more Lovecraftian nods and influences in Game of Thrones, and maybe even the answer of George R. R. Martin's theory of how man was created within his speculative works, right here on Fantasy or Prehistory. Hope you'll join us the next time, so subscribe and you won't miss a video. We come out every Thursday with music, prehistoric literary criticism and analysis, as well as real-life outings to archaeological sites that prove that our past was much more like a fantasy world than what we have been led to believe.